Okay. I was actually supposed to jump out of the screen like a lion, you know, the MGM, but they didn't want to break it. Good evening, everybody. Today I want to take you into some fascinating things about photography, a little bit of my journey, and I'll only show you just a few photos. Back in 2004, I went out on my first assignment with a digital camera. I knew nothing about the digital workflow or how it's going to work. It was a photo shoot at a school for disabled children in Bangalore. It was commissioned by a Scottish NGO, and the aim was to raise funds for the school. And when I arrived, I was welcomed by a lovely old lady whose name I can't remember. She took me around to show me the facility and introduced me to the children, and our conversation delved into the prevalent discrimination that is often experienced by people with visible disabilities who are very often considered incapable or mute. And as we were talking about ways to change these perceptions, I noticed that I too was looking at these kids with a tinge of pity. I was also subconsciously discriminating. Back in my hotel that evening, I started doubting my ability to be able to convey the right message with my photographs. And in an attempt to break free from my biases, I decided to forget everything and just go and have a good time with the children. The result was a powerful series of portraits that challenged stereotypes and highlighted the strength and beauty in each child, served the campaign very, very well. We jump forward 8 years. I was shooting for UNICEF, the polio eradication program in India, and I was in Bihar, a place called Kushweshwar Astan East. It's literally the end of the road, if you can even call it a road, because you can't even get there. There's no electricity. This photo was taken in the middle of the night. It's all lit by generators, whatever was there. The reason why I was there is because UNICEF had to set up a satellite office there that the vaccine would reach a day before, taken out of cold storage at 3 a.m. to be carried out on the head and through the mud to be loaded onto the ships at 5 a.m. and reach over 200 villages on the floodplain of the Kosi River to be vaccinating all over India on the same day. In the digital age, where images are omnipresent, photography has become a democratized language. Anyone with a camera or mobile phone can participate in the conversation and add their unique perspective to the global discourse. 1.81 trillion photos were taken last year alone. That means 57,000 photos per second, or 5 billion photos per day. The large majority of these photos will be forgotten, never to be seen or looked at again. The rest of them, most of them, will be uploaded to social media and forgotten. We often look at images and look at photos as just images capturing a moment. But what if I told you that photography is a rich language with its own grammar and vocabulary? Today, I invite you to consider this thought and think that just like in any spoken language, we can all take photographs, but it's going to take a conscious effort to turn them into a powerful expression. Think about this. If you go to Paris and you want to order yourself a double espresso with some cold milk on the side, you need to speak French. We all speak English. Yet there will be those who produce poetry and those who compile shopping lists. Just like in any language, photography has its grammar and its syntax, and it even has dialects. Documentary photography that chronicles reality to abstract photography that challenges our perceptions. Each of these dialects will add to the language, add to its symbolism. So where do we start? Many times I used to hear a lot of young photographers come up to me and say, so which camera do you use? You must have heard it before. The thing is, how does it matter? If I gave you Ravi Shankar's sitar, will you play like Ravi Shankar? The how is important. We need to know our tools. Just like in any profession or any hobby, we need to know how to work the tools. And in photography, that means the rules of exposure, to know light, which is the alphabet of the language, and to know the framing. Think about this, that you have a camera and you got this really big lens and you went on safari to Africa and you see a lion and you're very, very excited. Just coming close to the lion is not enough. See, if the framing is not good, you will show the lion, but it would not be a photograph. The camera, just like Dorothea Lange, a very famous American photographer, said, the camera is a tool that enables us to see without the camera. The how is how does the photographer sees the photo and not how the camera sees the photo. So we jump forward very, very quickly. You already know how to work your camera. You're very comfortable with it. What do you shoot? What pictures do you want to take? When I was 14, I was subscribed to National Geographic magazine. I used to go every month to the local post office and pick up a yellow envelope, yay size, and tear it apart on my way home, take out the National Geographic magazine. It had this yellow, distinct square on it, and go through the pictures. My English was not as good, well, it was not good enough at the time, so I really did not focus on the articles, but I looked at the photos. That's what I was looking at. And there was one feature that stayed with me for years, and I spoke about it many, many times. It was a story about a couple of French scientists and volcano lovers by the name of Katja and Maurice Kraft. They used to travel around the world and climb volcanoes and shoot outstanding images of lava flows and eruptions. The photos were incredible. They eventually died in one of these eruptions in Japan. They were found buried under a pyroclastic ash, hardly recognized by Maurice's watch and his camera. Now, why am I telling you this? Because these two people did not decide to be photographers and then sat at home with a glass of wine, started trying to think, what are we going to shoot? And came up with an idea of shooting volcanoes. They were shooting their own lives. They were telling the story that is their own life. It was a personal story. This brings us to the question of, which is, I feel, is the most important question a photographer needs to ask himself. It's not how, and it's not what. It's why. Why do I take this photo? Why do I shoot horizontally and not vertically? Why do I shoot in black and white? Why is that item in the frame and why is that item missing in the frame? Because just like Ansel Adams said, Ansel Adams was a very, very famous American photographer. He said that you don't make a photograph just with a camera. You bring into the act of photography all the pictures you've seen, all the books you read, all the music you've heard, and all the people you loved. It emphasizes the importance of the artist and not the art. Developing your ability to say something. We were talking about a language. We all speak English, but if you don't have anything interesting to say, your photographs will be boring. How would we then incorporate this into our own journey? Well, Abbas, another photographer, Magnum photographer, said in one of the talks that I heard him, he said, buy yourself a pair of good walking shoes and fall in love, which is great. And I thought it was really, really fantastic at the time. But then I started thinking that you need to have a point of departure. You need to decide what it is that you want to see. You go out looking for it. You might find it, you might not. But if you have no point of departure, you will find nothing. If you just go out there with a camera waiting for things to happen to you, nothing will happen. Leave your phones, stop consuming. Go out there, have experiences, meet people, interact, immerse yourself in the culture. It's not enough for a photo to be technically good today. What we need to see, what the world craves for, is your own point of view. We've seen all the sunsets and all the mountains and all the remote villages were already documented. What we haven't seen is your point of view. It is the artist's voice that is important in photography as in any other art. And let me end this with a small story of a meeting with a great photographer by the name of Roger Ballon. He's perhaps the most exhibited photographer in the 21st century. I knew his work for a long time, and I was lucky enough to take him to Old Delhi one day. And I knew his work. I took him to a go-down where we were looking at papier-mâché masks, all these animals, and in the alleys of Old Delhi. And at one point, he was holding these two masks and saying, I know what I'm going to do with it. So on the bicycle rickshaw on the way back to the car, I said, Roger, looking at my own work, you were holding these two masks over there. Do you really know what you're going to do with it? His answer was profound. He said, we're all looking for paths into the forest. These are clues as to the whereabouts of these paths. Remember, photography is an ever-going journey of self-exploration. It is not anymore about the world outside, but it is about the way that we see it. If we have the language, if we know the vocabulary and the grammar, and we have something to say, this is what we want to see. I hope these tips will help you a little bit on your short journey in photography. I'm assuming most of you are not professional photographers, but good luck in your way. Thank you very much for having me here. It was an honor.